Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. Have a little bit of a cold, so hopefully it doesn't throw off the audio too much. But anyways, we have a very special guest, another very special guest. But before we get to our guest, want to welcome our co-host, Corinne French.
Hey, I'm very excited about today. This is one of my favorite trustees from a local district. So we're getting up in my neck of the woods now. We were doing lots down in your area, and so I'm excited to have our guest today.
Yes, trustee and friend and just an amazing human being. But I will not take his thunder. Charles Stafford, trustee, Denton ISD. How you doing today, Charles?
I'm doing really well, thank you. I'm a fan of your podcast. I think this is really neat what you guys do. You've had some very interesting and engaging people on, and I like the idea of it being a faith-based business that you're in, and I would take the opportunity, if you guys are okay with it, for a 5-second moment of silence, and we can say a few words to the Lord about Ukraine. Is that okay?
That sounds great.
Let's go. Thanks. I appreciate that. So the primaries are over, and we're gearing up for city and school elections. And I had some thoughts that I think might be useful to talk about running for office. I remember back in 1988 when I was first thinking about running for school board, I made a list of people in town that were leaders, and I was going to go ask their opinion about my candidacy. And the first person I went to was this old country lawyer I said, Phil, what do you think about my running for school board? And he hit me right between the eyes with, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for service. And I was not expecting that. And it made me really stop and think about appropriately, because I was young and I had kids and I had opinions, and I was going to go in there and fix stuff and lead change and the charge. And it was more about me than it was about service. And it's a really great idea to center yourself around the concept of being a servant leader. It works well. I can tell you from experience.
Tell us your experience. Tell us, because you went right into servant leadership, but tell us a little. Okay. Tell us, yeah.
Yeah. Well, my biography can be fairly brief. I grew up in Lubbock. I went to the University of Texas. I moved to Denton County in 1979. I adopted 4 kids. They were all sexually abused. And through that experience, I came to realize that I might have something to contribute to the school system. I learned a long time ago, working in politics, that if you want to influence the system, it's useful to be a part of the system. So I ran for office, and lo and behold, I got elected. I have served as in a public service arena. I was the founding board chair of the Children's Advocacy Center of Denton County. I was the founding board president of the Public Education Foundation for Denton ISD. I serve on several boards now. I serve as a board member of the Mexican American School Board Association, which is truly a wonderful organization. You've had Willie Tenorio on your podcast. He's a class act. He's exemplary. I do serve on the board of the Communities and Schools of North Texas, which is a dropout prevention program, and it's wonderful. It's one of the greatest uses of leveraging federal dollars through volunteers, and kids who have a mentor through CIS literally promote to the next grade 99% of the time.
Wow.
You carry a kid all the way through, it fixes the dropout problem. And it's really proud of that work. That organization, the North Texas chapter, of which I'm a board member, is so well run that we were selected here in the last month or so from Mackenzie Scott, who is former Mrs. Jeff Bezos, who has about $90 billion to give away. She gave us $3 million unrestricted. You guys know what you're doing. I'm not going to tell you how to use the money.
Congratulations.
It was really, it was a great experience to be honored in that way. So I've served on the school board for, well, since '88. I took about 9 years off in the middle of all that, but I've had about 25 years on the board.
Wow.
I have been, as far as personal experience, I served on the board of TASB. I served as TASB's president, in the officer rotation for about 6 years. TASB is one of the finest organizations around, and TASB does a great deal to support school districts, to support individual board members as far as training and getting acclimated and learning how to work with a group. TASB is very, very valuable, and TASB provides a lot of services to school districts. It's a nonprofit, so TASB has a risk management apparatus. It also has a purchasing co-op that is closing in on $2 billion of sales a year, and it's remarkable. They've established low bid prices for commodities, everything from pencils to school buses. But what's cool is South Texas ISD can buy one school bus for the same low price that Houston buys 40 through this purchasing co-op. And the TASB takes a 4% premium off the top, and that money goes to pay for TASB programs like the free legal hotline that people call in and use. Anyway,
Tell us about, I have a question about the day you became TASB president. I was there in the audience. That's at TASB, right? And what was it like to have your district performing? Because that's, and for our guests that don't know, I mean, TASB is Texas Association of Schools, TASA, Texas Association of School Administrators. And at that general convention, the TASB, new TASB president's district gets to do what? Tell us about that.
Really a good story. We, as the president-elect, or the newly installed, I got to, or I was responsible, my district was responsible for providing the entertainment for the General Assembly. Several thousand school board members in the room, and our kids got up there, and we have a remarkable fine arts program. It's smashing how good these kids are. We have middle school jazz band that's as good or better than most high school jazz bands. We had choirs. We had all ages of choirs. We had little bitty kids and high school seniors. We had the silks, the Cirque du Soleil silk thing. We had kids climbing silks and doing acrobatics. They were performing music. They had a script. It was 20 minutes of remarkable talent on display. And by the time they finished, I was pretty choked up. In fact, I remember saying, this is what public education or public school properly funded can do. And we are, the auditorium was just riveted. And those folks stood on their feet and yelled for those kids for minutes.
When we air this podcast, we might have to air that also, put that next to it on our social media. It was impressive.
It really
it's impressive. So you said something earlier that I want to ask a question about, like servant leadership and what that looks like. And when we're running for office, it feels one way, and then when we become part of a team, it's another. Can you talk about that transition a little?
I will. People have to understand, or need to understand, that as an elected board member, you have no authority and no power. The only authority that you have is as part of the board. The board has the authority to hire and evaluate, fire a superintendent. The board has the authority to set a budget. board has the authority to set policy. Our other job is to hire the superintendent who does everything else. And it's difficult for people to grasp the concept of alone, I have no effect. As a part of a group, I am the governance body. And TASB has some really neat programs and ways for people to figure that out. But a high performing board is a board where all seven board members and the superintendent, which we refer to as the team of 8, work together collaboratively. And you don't have to agree with each other all the time, but you just have to understand that once the board makes a decision, that you all need to get on board and support the decision of the majority. Don't try to sabotage or undermine or keep bringing it back up for another vote. It's settled. It's done. Work together. There, like I said, there's so many templates for how to do great collaborative work. One of the things that our district has done, and I'm really, really proud of this, is when it comes to advocacy, and that's something else that school boards need to do, which is get involved with your community, with the Chamber of Commerce. In Denton, we're involved with the Chamber, we're involved with a couple of public universities, we're involved with our city council, our county commissioners, and we try to collaboratively meet with all of them and have adopt the same advocacy agenda, and at the very least, understand everybody else's agenda. And the way it's been working for us the last several cycles of the legislature is we have teams made up of people, city council person, a school board person, somebody from UNT, somebody from United Way, and we all go to visit a particular legislative office as a group, and we represent each other. We support each other. It's pretty remarkable the response you get from some of these state house representatives and senators, because they're not accustomed to the school district and the city being partners. They typically
I'm
are
wanting to
not.
start that. I'm wanting to do more of that as Valley View grows. So we'll have to look to how Denton does that.
Yes,
because we're so small compared to y'all, but some of your growth is coming our way.
So Charles, kind of back up a little bit. So when we first started this interview, you had mentioned that when you became a board member, you had some ideas that you wanted to influence and that sort of thing when you got on the board. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, obviously in today's times, there's differing views on a lot of different subjects, whether that be books in the library or masks. What's the best approach if you get on a board for change to happen, instead of, continuing to go down one direction? If you're new to a board, can you drive change?
You can certainly be part of the conversation. And one of the things that people learn, or maybe they already know, is how to be respectful, to listen to one another, to exchange ideas. And if it comes down to a particular vote on a particular subject, then there may be differences of opinion. I have recently seen a board where most of the board members they're in growth mode. There's a piece of property they need. The discussion was whether or not to invoke condemnation authority. And one board member felt really strongly against that, didn't want to take somebody's property unless they voluntarily gave it up. Everybody else is going, they asked for 5 times what it's worth. We're not paying that. It would be irresponsible. So they're going to have a vote. I predict that the outcome of the vote is to invoke condemnation, and there will be probably a 6-to-1 vote to do it. And once that vote is had, it's done, it's over. And everybody supports the board's decision. You don't keep bringing it back. As far as everybody brings change. One of the most wonderful things about the conferences that we go to, the Summer Leadership Conference, the State Convention, National School Board Association, you go to these conferences and you hear what other people are doing. People basically showcase their best practices. And as a baby board member, I didn't have a clue about most of that stuff. I thought I had a clue about some stuff, but the truth was, you go to a conference like that. I remember coming back from a conference 25 years ago and saying, you know, if we got smarter about how we build these schools, we'd save a whole bunch of money in electricity. They're doing it in other states, in other places. Let's get smarter about how we conserve energy. And the idea came back. It got discussed around by the board, and ultimately, we made several changes as a group to hire an energy advisor who showed us how to save a lot of money. That was really a great move. And to change how we design buildings. And we're still doing that. We're still looking to improve. Every building we build is more efficient than the last one we built. And it's so there's a constant stream. If you're willing to put yourself out there and do the hard work, there's a constant stream of things that might work for your community, they might not. But you bring it in, you have professionals, you have a superintendent, you have curriculum specialists, you have people who are trained to evaluate this stuff. One of the superintendent's lines that I love a lot is, "In God we trust, all others show me your data," which is how we need to be. We don't need to be opinion driven. We need to be data driven. And in my district, that's really how it is. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely did. And so there is opportunity there. And I like the data-driven approach. I mean, there's so much data available to make objective decisions. So that makes great sense. I know we're running a little bit short on time. Corinne, did you want to ask a question?
I do. I always wish our podcast could be longer, but I do. I want, Charles, you know, people are running for re-election, lots of boards. We've talked about that. People are running for all kinds of offices right now. What are some of your best tips to keep a campaign positive, to be proud of a campaign, but also to keep getting the message out there, what maybe prior experience, just some of your best tips for those of us who are still learning.
If anybody who's been involved in their community needs to be sure that they make it clear about the volunteer service they've done. My example of myself is I was very active in Boy Scouts for about a decade. I did all this charity work, founding charities. Those were things that I did that were from the heart. I wasn't doing them for political reasons, but serving on district committees, serving on a bond committee is really, really important. For somebody to come out of left field and say, "Hey, I'm going to come in here and make an impact." If they've been doing, like, followed the example of Mia Price. Mia served on the PTA board. She served on the bond committee. Mia had been years of attending meetings and learning about the district. When she ran for the school board, she knew what she was talking about. She had been part of it. So, and that's what you want. You want people engaged, and they don't have to be on the school board to be engaged. There are districts out there, like HEB is a great example, who has an academy for people who want to know about school district stuff. And they can go to school and be taught how the budgets work, how a lot of things work. And they have a pool of great candidates there for people who could step up and serve. So I think what you're really asking for, the more experience, the better, and the better you communicate that to the voters and to the public. This is what you get. It's like, I had a guy run against me 10 years ago, and he's a great guy. He had all these good ideas, and all I could say was, done that. And if the voters want somebody who's been there and done that and has the experience, then I'm your logical choice, because this other guy's got all these great intentions, but I have all these connections around the state and nationally to affect change, positive things for my district. And I'm wanting to serve. So some people have better qualifications. They typically get the spot.
Well, that's very good. I appreciate that. I think the experience, to me, experience matters. I think that's kind of what we're saying, is that the experience and connections matter.
Exactly.
Those willing to do the work, working as a team player. I think I love that. I love also the idea and the conversation. I like to always ask our guests about the idea of governance versus leadership. And you kind of cemented that right in the beginning of the podcast about that we alone are nothing, but when we work together, we're governing that district. And so you kind of hit all my favorite points in that. And so thank you, Charles, for being with us today. We'll have to have you come on again and talk. I would love to talk more about over the years, how things can change on the board and different. I mean, I think there's so many things that we didn't get to today that I want to maybe bring you back on again in a few months, if that's okay.
Say the word.
Awesome.
I love it. Thank you.
Yes, that would be so great to have you back on, Charles. It's always great visiting with you and hearing your perspective on different different things around public education, and you as well, Corinne. And before we close out, just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact is making an impact in schools and ministries by giving funding, unrestricted funding, using technology. So they're actually producing additional sources of revenue through energy savings. Maybe the only positive cash flow program out there right now for schools related to energy. And it doesn't cost schools 1 penny to receive. So if your school needs funding, reach out to Ideal Impact. And if you have any doubts at all, they have over 164 references to school districts in Texas and over 700 ministries. So if you need funding, definitely reach out to Ideal Impact. And for those of you all that have been tuning in, stay tuned for future episodes of the Educational Leadership Podcast.